back down.
I am now joined by my man Richard Sherman from Seattle to give you his insight into Pete Carroll. Richard, of course, played for Pete and Seahawks for 7 seasons, won and unfortunately lost a Super Bowl with Pete. So, Richard, scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you to hear that Pete is no longer the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks?
It's always a 10. It's always a 10 when you fire a head coach after another winning season. Obviously, they didn't make the playoffs. They had some unfortunate losses, but you never expect them to make a move like this at a time like this. You know, it's been a pretty stable franchise throughout his entire career there. And so for them to move on from him without any obvious successor or any really awful season or anything like that is kind of surprising, but it seems like ownership wanted to move in that direction. He seemed caught off guard by it. It's a really sad day for the city of Seattle. It's a sad day for the NFL, for, you know, one of the legends of the game. Obviously, he and Bill Belichick parting ways from their respective teams in the same day or the same week is insane. But
it's insane.
You know, he's meant so much to this city, and the way he's changed the culture of not only the team but the city, the outlook of this team. When he first got there, not a lot of people were thinking of Seattle. It wasn't a big NFL market, and there weren't a lot of people talking about it. You know, they had went to the Super Bowl against Pittsburgh, but people were thinking about it as South Alaska when I was there, when we first got there. And by the time, you know, now people think about it as a destination. Guys want to go there. Guys wanted to come play for Pete Carroll. Guys wanted to play on that defense, the legendary defense that we had, the legendary runs we went on. It was an awesome time. It was an incredible time. You know, one of the only coaches to win a national championship and a Super Bowl. It's been a fun ride to be a part of. It's been a fun ride to watch as a kid, growing up in L.A., watching the USC Trojans make those runs, getting recruited by Pete Carroll when I'm, you know, high school, junior, senior, going to the camps. So, you know, I've had a relationship with Pete for almost 20 years now. So it's really an emotional day to see it all come to an end like that.
Richard, what was it like when you gathered at your restaurant with Cam Chancellor, obviously the one you own, your ex-teammates, Pete, some of the ex-coaches now, former assistants? What was that gathering like yesterday?
It was incredible. You know, it was a lot of emotion. Even some of the current players came: Quandre Diggs, DK, Tyler, Charles Cross, Achina. There were a lot of guys. Julian Love. Wow. There were a lot of guys that came by to show their respects. Obviously, the veteran guys. Bobby came by. Russell flew into town to stop by and to show his respects to Pete. Sidney Rice, Doug Baldwin, Jermaine Kearse. There were a ton of guys, and it was a love fest. You know, it was giving a lot of love. It was Pete, you know, giving some of his speeches and his jokes and the things that he says all the time, some of the stories that he tells. And it was hilarious because you could hear guys quoting almost word for word the stories. And this is young guys, this is older guys, this is guys that he coached 10 years ago or guys that he coached this year. And it really just showed the impact that he's made on so many young men, the style that he's had, the love that he has from his guys, from his players. His wife was there. You know, she felt the love, I think, from everyone. And I think it was a fitting moment. You know, it was kind of last minute put together. They called, wanted to all get together, and guys showed up for him on a Wednesday night in the middle of the week. He's a guy that people show up for. And, I mean, obviously, Russell flew into town to be able to share this moment of closure with Pete and the guys.
Tears shed?
Oh, no question. It was tears. It was hugs. There were laughs. There was a little bit of fussing. There was talking about old memories, old times, old games, old jokes in the locker room, old meetings, you know, things, you know, there's so much history there. Yeah. So there were so many conversations. But the one thing that was evident was that he wasn't done.
Really? Interesting. So he does want to coach again, be a head coach in the National Football League.
He wants to be a head coach in the National Football League, and I got a feeling if one of these teams called and interviewed him, he'd be a hard one to pass up because of the way he runs his program. I mean, I couldn't, call me crazy, Skip, but if the Los Angeles Chargers called Pete Carroll, that would be a match made in heaven.
Great point.
For a number of reasons.
Yeah.
But he would get more butts in that stadium than they've had in the history of them being in LA, which has been a short amount of time.
Yeah.
He'd change the culture of that program.
He would.
He'd get these guys playing a way that they haven't played, especially defensively. He'd bring the coaches in. He'd bring the community together. And that's the spot I would like to see him. But I don't think he's done coaching. I expect to see him coaching somewhere else in the near future if he wants to.
By the way, I just had a quick conversation with Keyshawn off air. I just threw out Carolina could do worse than Pete Carroll. I'm just throwing out if nobody wants Pete, but you brought up a home run situation with the Chargers. But hey, Carolina, I'm just saying, if you want somebody to come in and turn your program around, and obviously Pete dealt with a smaller, shorter quarterback in Russ, and now he would do the same with Bryce. I'm just throwing this out. There are several jobs. We could probably make a case for Pete at 4 or 5 places.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. He's that type of coach. And I think, it's just unfortunate. I think the fans kind of, at least the loudest ones, I think for the most part, they've been pretty supportive of Pete. They love Pete. Understand he's the greatest coach to ever grace this franchise, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. But, the noise got too loud for ownership. I think it got too much, and they wanted to try something new. I think it's going to be a situation, unless they get the perfect candidate, unless they get like a Dan Quinn to come right in, and I think he would steady the ship pretty good, and they wouldn't lose a step, and the city would embrace him. The city loves Dan Quinn and what he's done. But outside of that, I can't see a lot of guys coming in and being able to just step in and not miss a step and not take a step back from the culture and everything that Pete was able to build in his 14 years in Seattle.
Okay, and obviously Dan Quinn's the defensive coordinator in Dallas. Was his name brought up by the current players at the gathering last night? Did you hear some Dan Quinn talk?
Not by the current players, but by, the older players, the guys that have played for him.
Okay.
And the guys, and Pete kind of seemed like he might feel that way in a way, but he's still obviously dealing with the shock of this decision. So we try, you try not to bring up things like that when he's, to him at least. But there were definitely some conversations where guys think that would be the choice that they would make. It would be the smart choice, I think, for a lot of reasons, for a plethora of reasons. And I think it'd be the choice that Dan would feel most comfortable with. I think it would be a home run for both sides. Obviously, you don't want to have to lose Pete to make it happen, but if you have to lose Pete to bring Dan in, I think a lot of people would feel more comfortable with that than a lot of other guys.
So Richard, you were close to Pete. Sometimes you guys clash because it always happens. But the point is, I need you now to explain to people, to define what was it like to play for Pete Carroll? Who was he? What was he as your head coach?
If you've done martial arts, he was like your sensei. He was like your master. He's like the guy that unlocks the greatest potential in guys in ways that are unique and out of the ordinary. You would think if you came into the building at times during my time there, music's blasting. If you walked into a team meeting, you might see music blasting, guys shooting shots on a basket, keeping score. You might see Pete playing one-on-one against one of the players, and you may think, man, how is this guy running this program? And these guys are about to go 0-16, 0-17, whatever the case may be. But it's the way he talks to his players individually, how he cares, how he checks on them, how he talks to them during games, during practices, wanting to understand what they're going through, what they're thinking, what they're seeing out there. It's the moments and times where you push and pull, where you poke and prod, where you go into the meetings, where you have a routine, where you have the Tell the Truth Mondays, the Turnover Thursdays, the Get It Right, perfection on Fridays. You got the walkthrough on Saturdays. You got the moments, the stories, the things that guys get used to when you go to meetings in training camp and going over goal line. The DBs know he's going to come in there and make you solemnly swear that you won't get beat deep on a short yardage play. I mean, it's every year. It's a guy that really takes every level of his team seriously. He takes it all to heart, and he goes out there and makes sure that he is in tune and in line with everything that's going on and every person that is on his team. He has a story, he has a relationship with every single person on the staff, every single player on the team. And so when you go out there and a guy rolls the ball out and he says best man is going to play, I don't care if you're a first rounder or undrafted, and you send out 53 guys, then you walk out on game day with the best 22 most times. And that's the culture that he built, and that's why we were so special.
Man, that was a beautiful breakdown. So I have to ask, did last night the flashpoint moment come up occasionally? Did you talk at all about the Malcolm Butler play that cost you that Super Bowl?
Skip, that was not part of the dinner table conversation. Not this time, at least. I mean, usually it comes up. I think it's just too much of an emotional day already on Pete and his family. you know, want to bring up stuff like that. That's going to trigger him even more. You know, it won't be the last conversation we have. It won't be the last time we break bread. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future. We've talked about it repeatedly. I've interviewed him and talked about it. It's one of those plays that you'll never forget. That'll live in infamy. One of those decisions. I think he'll say, you know, he'd make again, but you know, in reality, I don't think he would because of the result, because of the situation. But it is what it is at this point. You know, this was one of those moments you just try to think about the good times, remember the good times, hug him, love him, try to embrace him, try to uplift him. And that's what we did.
And just for your sake, what is your lingering memory about that play call?
Well, it's just unfortunate. It was unfortunate. It seemed like there was enough time, we had a timeout. There was a chance to just hand it to Marshawn and get the win. And I think, you know, a situation we could have lived with and really slept good at night is if we ran Marshawn 3-4 times and they stopped him all 3 times, we would have went to sleep, shook hands, and went home and understood, hey, they got us. We put our best foot forward. And they were the better team that day. But when it happened like it did, it leaves so much doubt. It leaves so much to chance and so many questions. If. And, you know, I'm not if Bayless, but, you know, it does leave some ifs for me, too.
It does. It does. For once, you are. And just for those who have forgotten, Russell Wilson had just hit Jermaine Kearse for 33 yards. So you had first and goal at the 5, and you gave it to Marshawn for 4 yards. So now it's second and goal at the 1 with 26 seconds left. So still pretty good time left on the clock. And even though the analytics said that Marshawn during the season had only scored 1 time in 5 tries from the 1-yard line, the momentum of the moment, the sort of eye test emotion of the moment would be, well, just give it to Marshawn again. He just got 4 yards, right?
No question. No question. That would be, the logic that everybody else would have been subscribing to. And maybe that's why Pete threw the ball, because he thought that everybody would be subscribing to that and they catch him by surprise. But it was